In this video, I'm going to package up a vintage sewing machine and subject it to some crash test to see if it would likely survive shipping. So enjoy the video. Hi, I wanted to talk to you about sewing machines. During COVID, I collected quite a number of sewing machines. You see some of them in the background here, and I really can't keep them all. So I need to ship them because I can't depend on our local market to be able to absorb the machines that I have. I've been concerned about shipping and making sure that they arrive intact at my customer's doorstep. Now, I've watched some online chatter about how sewing machines have arrived damaged, broken at customer's door. Most of this chatter was putting the blame squarely on the carriers, whether it be the Postal Service or whether it be FedEx or UPS or whoever else you might ship your sewing machines with. But when looking at the pictures of those machines, it became pretty clear that they weren't packed appropriately. So early on in my career, I was a supply officer in the Canadian Armed Forces. And we learned about packaging because we need to get material from point A to point B in some really harsh conditions, and it needs to be able to survive the trip and be functional when it's arrived at its destination. So there are two things that we needed to look at. One was what we called external collision. What is this box that it's packaged in going to be running into? What's going to hit it? What is it going to be stacked up with? Is it going to be dropped or tumbled? All of those things are going to potentially damage what's inside of the box. Second collision that we needed to concern ourselves with is, what about the collision of components or pieces within that box? If they are rattling around, they're going to be acting just like little cannonballs inside of the main box. So let's take a sewing machine, for example, particularly a vintage sewing machine. It's going to weigh upwards of 40 pounds for the machine itself. And then we're going to put it into a fragile wooden case and we're going to ship it. Now, if it's not anchored down securely, if it's not packaged right, the outside box may survive, but inside there's going to be damage to the machine. So here's a vintage sewing machine that is in my collection. It's not the prettiest machine. It's sound. The case is sound. The machine works fine, but it really doesn't have a lot of market value. So I'm going to take this machine and package it up, and then I'm going to subject it to some pretty brutal testing and then unpackage it afterwards to see how it made out. So stay tuned. So I've packaged up the machine, and I'm now outside of our home, and I'm going to roll this package containing our machine down the staircase. I'm going to roll it down 4 times, twice end over end, and twice roll it down on the sides. Okay, so here's the second time down the staircase. There's 13 steps. Now the final test down sideways again. Okay, I think that's brutal enough. We'll stop it now. Okay, so you saw me roll this box down the staircase 4 times. I rolled it 2 times end to end. and 2 times around on the side. So my guess is that that's probably more brutal than what you'll get in the normal handling of any of the carriers. Slide the case in, rather. So I've swept up the packing peanuts that were on the floor so I wouldn't step on them. You'd hear the crunching as I walked around. So let's have a look at the case itself to see what we know. It doesn't look like there's anything, there's no obvious damage. We'll tell more when we get it apart, but there's nothing here that looks like damage on my initial look at it. So let's take it apart. So what you'll notice here is that for the exterior of the case, the way that I packaged it is that I first wrapped it with stretch wrap, and it would be, I wrapped it around, going around this way, and then I wrapped it going around this way. And then after I finished that, then I used packing tape, and I went around the same way. I went around this way here and covered pretty well the whole thing. I can't guarantee that every square inch of the case is covered in tape, but pretty much the whole thing. And then I went around this way here, paying special attention to put 2 or 3 layers of packing tape around the base of the cabinet. Base of the cabinet, but it's really a case, not a cabinet. Okay, so we're going to peel this open. So you see what I meant when in the introduction I said this isn't a particularly pretty case. It's not particularly pretty case. The previous owner marked his name and address on the top of it in felt pen. Much of the fabric that was covering it is worn off. There's evidence of old duct tape on top here, so probably not the kind of thing you would spend a lot of money to buy, and certainly not a lot of money to ship. It's not that kind of a machine. Certainly not that kind of a case. And the machine inside, well, it runs fine, but like I said, it's not the prettiest looking thing that we've got. So you may have noticed here that after I put the stretch wrap on it and the packing tape, that then I then wound this strapping tape, and it's very, very strong tape. It's made to secure parcels. It doesn't have any stretch in it, and its breaking strength for each 1 inch wide of tape, that's breaking strength is supposed to be somewhere around 110 pounds. So you put a 110 pound weight on the bottom of a single piece of this tape, and it should be able to hold the weight that you put on the bottom. So I did that because I want to make absolutely certain that this whole sewing machine and the case is one single unit, that there's no chance that the bottom and the top of the case will ever get separated. Even if there's catastrophic damage to the box itself, that I want to make sure that that will never ever come apart. So now, let's open her up. Let's see what we've got. So you'll notice in here, same kind of thing, that I put not cling wrap, this stuff. I put packing film on the inside, and I wrapped it around and around. You'll see the process that I went through. So if you're ever going to watch this video to try and duplicate my packing technique, you'll have to download it and play it in reverse, because I'm starting from the outside and working to the inside. And I'm doing that because it's a lot quicker to unpack it than it is to pack it. And so I think I can explain what I did. You can see it quite clearly as I did it. So what are the components that I'm cutting away here on the outside? So after you'll see in a few minutes what the base of this sewing machine case, how I packed it. But what I did with here is I put that packing film, that stretch wrap, around multiple times around the, from bottom to top in here as kind of the last step on there, and then I wound it this way, and then I put packing tape on top of it. Okay, so I need to open this up and you'll see what the inside looks like. Nothing is rattling, so that's a good sign. So you notice that I put a piece of styrofoam on the end here. Again, I'm thinking of catastrophic failure of the outside box, and catastrophic failure of the case that the sewing machine is in. This will protect the end and do the same on this end here. Now there's another reason for putting styrofoam on the top and on the ends, and that is to make sure that in case the base and the sewing machine ever separate from each other, that inside of this case there's not room for the machine to start bouncing around. Because if it starts bouncing, that's when you're going to end up with a lot of damage inside, either to the machine itself. Just spend a moment or two talking about what the outside of this, what I just took off, really entails. So like I mentioned, around, and multiple times around here with stretch wrap, and then I anchored it with more of this tape here, right over the initial stretch wrap down to the machine. You see the remnants of it here and here. So that went around, I think it was 3 times around. So there's 2 inches here, sorry, 1 inch here and 1 inch here, so that's 2. So that's 220 pounds. Another 2 is another 220 pounds, so 440 pounds. And then that was doubled, so 880, and doubled, and once more, 880, so it's about 12 or 1300 pounds of pressure that this thing here can withstand from that tape. And the pressure we're talking about is the machine wanting to pull away from the rest of the base. So that's what happened here on the next layer. And then if you look here, I put the foot in here. There's nothing in here. It's just spacer in here. Stuffed it right in here so that there'd be no way that this would ever bounce back and forth and get enough momentum to do any damage, especially down here at your needle end of the machine. So we'll open that in a minute. So now when we look at the base of the machine, here, let's get rid of this part here because that's the second layer. So at the base here, I put a narrower shrink wrap here, and the reason I put that there was just to protect the cabinet and the machine itself from the tape residue. So I put that packing tape, or that packing film, around here, and around here, just catching the end of the base of the machine. And once I had that on, I put packing tape, just this clear packing tape like this. I put that around all 3 locations here, and I put it around multiple times because there is a strength in that. And then finally, I put that, this strapping tape. Where is it? Right here. Here's the strapping tape. Can you see it? It's got fiberglass filaments in it from end to end, and it makes it very, very, very strong. And so I put packing tape, multiple rolls of rounds of it here, and here, and here. Because what I wanted to prevent was during those tumbles down the stairs, I wanted to prevent the sewing machine and the base of the cabinet separating. And you may notice on the outside of the box it has crash test number 2. This is my second attempt at rolling this machine down that same staircase the same number of times. Now the first time I did it, I didn't have this anchored well enough to the base of the machine, the base of the cabinet. Sorry, let's try that again. I didn't have the base of the case and the machine anchored together well enough, and so it floated inside of the box, and it broke the hinge, or where the hinge was mounted to the base. So I repaired it, and then I did it again, and I beefed up this part here, and so it looks like it's held okay. So let's cut this off. So there's that one off. And this one is coming off. See, it's not coming off easily, and you notice that it was quite easy to pick this machine up and have it held down securely by the tape. Now if this whole parcel was traveling with this side down, and it was bouncing along a road or along a conveyor belt, or dropped on its head, dropped on the ground with this side down, that the machine is going to want to keep going even though the outside box has stopped. It's almost like wearing a seatbelt in your car, that you want to keep from hitting the inside of the car if you're ever in a car accident. So that's where you're going to get yourself killed. Okay, so here is this last one undone. So let's just move these out of the way. Okay, now you'll see that I wrapped this as well. And what my concern was, this sewing machine motor, well, it's not as heavy as the whole machine. If it gets moving around, it could bend the sewing machine mount, it could rattle up against the machine and break it, or in worst case it could come right off. If it breaks the mount off, it could come right off of the machine and then be floating around inside of the sewing machine cabinet while it's in transit. So you notice one other thing that I did is between the machine and the body of the sewing machine, I put some styrofoam rolls and just this padding in there, just to make sure that it wasn't going to be bouncing around this way here. And then there's a couple of plug-ins. This is an old machine, and it plugs into an outlet that goes to the foot pedal. One goes to the foot pedal, one goes to the machine. So I wrapped those so that there wasn't any movement. I don't want to hear rattles in there, and this is, that's what that is for. Now, let's look at the front here, and you notice that I left a test piece of fabric underneath here, and I left the needle down in the down position. Oh, came loose. Yeah, I kind of think if I'm doing it again, I'll leave the needle out of it so that there's not a chance that it breaks off and gets stuck in the bobbin. So that's where that's underneath there, and just so that there's not any chance of damage to the feed dogs if there's any movement at all in the presser foot. So let's tip this back. Oh, and I put this on just so that it's pre-threaded, so that the next person that owns this machine doesn't have to try and figure out how it works. But everything is okay. The bobbin case is still intact in there. Everything looks like it works okay. So I would say successful. Oh, I know what I was going to do. I was going to unwrap this. And I wrap this up with styrofoam. Just this stuff here is actually what they put when they're building a house. They put it between the concrete foundation and the sill plate. So when they start building the house, they put this down between the concrete foundation and the first board that goes along, and that just keeps moisture from wicking up through the concrete into the wooden part of the house. So, and you notice I haven't used bubble wrap in anything that is critical. I used bubble wrap on these because there is no weight to it. I use bubble wrap as that spacer in there just because that would be a really low impact area. But for the machine itself and for the foot pedal and controller, I used styrofoam, and I did that because with the bubble pack, the bubble wrap, that if you had some damage where this machine, for example, floated up because it gave away down below on where it was mounted to the base of this sewing machine case, if that failed, that you would have the first hit would absorb some shock when it hit up against the top of the sewing machine cabinet, but the second hit there'd be no protection because the bubbles would be broken. So they would break, they would pop. You or your kids have popped these bubble wrap. Kind of addictive, isn't it? Hey? But there's no protection after it's had its first hit, and it's the same reason why I don't wrap the machine in bubble wrap and put it into the box, because I want something that's going to be able to take repeated bangings. Because as you watch when we rolled it down the staircase, that it wasn't just one hit, that there were multiple hits each time it went down. So there's 13 steps, and I know it didn't hit every step, but it hit every second one. So it's got to be probably at least probably 30 times that it was hit on the edge of the concrete step, and have a look at what we've got here. So, machine works. Everything turns over okay. No damage anywhere. So here it is. The machine and the case survived a pretty brutal crash test. I believe this sewing machine would have arrived safely at your doorstep if I had have shipped it to you. So, thanks for watching.